All right. Hey, everybody. Thanks
Hi.
again for a cool episode. Alyssa's back. We're going to talk about marketing
Yeah.
and specifically how to evaluate marketing success, probably one of the most contentious subjects in marketing. Everybody has a different point of view. Usually, if you pay attention, their point of view is very dependent on what they're doing. So if they do like a lot of Google ads and stuff like that, it'll be the number of leads generated or revenue generated. If they're more a branding person, it'll be more brand and lift and all that stuff. So we're here today to demystify everything. I don't know. Maybe not. But Alyssa, nice to have you back. Thank you.
Yeah. Yay. Thanks for having me, you guys.
All right.
Thanks for being here.
As we move
that's
into
not a
the
very good
jungle
vote of
of
confidence.
analytics.
Yeah,
that,
you just said maybe not. Of course, she will demystify it all. I'm confident.
Oh, well, you know.
Entirely. I'm going to have an answer that people probably may not like, too. So heads up.
Oh,
I like the
Heads
sound
up.
of
like that even better.
Getting contentious here.
All right.
Fab, are you asking
So
the
where do you
first
want to get
question?
started? Well, I mean, I just want to get the ball rolling. So, I mean, obviously, like I spent a lot of my career in marketing, and I've lived a lot of different ways that people wanted to measure marketing. When I was an ad agency, if the campaign was a success, then we would say the goal was leads and all that stuff. If the campaign was a flop, we said, well, it was brand. Like we got a lot of good brand reach. And then when I became like kind of a marketing director and all that, it was some sort of a lead form. Now what I'm seeing more and more of, especially shameless plug, like clients that use HubSpot, where their CRM and their marketing activities are tied together. There's a lot of revenue attribution, like how much pipeline is generated by marketing activities. All that being said, there's still a lot of discussion out there on the best way to measure the impact.
Yeah.
So what's your point?
Yeah.
That wasn't a question, I realized. I just stopped the sentence.
No, that's okay.
I'm going to stop talking now.
I can roll from there. You're totally right. And your point alone in that there are so many different ways that you could measure success is indicative of the fact that there are so many ways to measure success. And like any form of analytics or any kind of reporting, you can spin those metrics however you want, right? So if you're looking to insights from a creative agency or creative partner or anyone who you're paying to do that work, their metric of success is going to be what the number of them in the best light, right? So, hey, we got you this many leads. Hey, we, did this much. And that's helpful to know that information, but they can't offer an unbiased lens on what is best for your business and whether it was successful or not. And that's where I like to emphasize whenever I'm speaking to medium-sized businesses, small businesses, obviously large organizations, that measurement of success must come from the inside. It can't be looking to anyone else externally to say whether the campaign or the tactic or the initiative was a success. And the only way you can know internally whether an initiative was a success would be to define what we're considering success from the get-go, what we want to achieve out of this initiative. What's the goal that we want to accomplish by doing A, B, and C? And unless those are established from the get-go, you have absolutely no way of measuring whether it was successful or not. It's completely subjective and a willy-nilly throwing mud against the wall and who looked at it today and what their feelings were about it.
So
yeah, and I feel that...
Oh, do you mind if I jump in, Fab? I told you to have a lot of questions.
Go for it.
So from what you're saying, I'm not, I come from the sales world, and typically when you're in the sales world, you're looking for results, right? It's fair. There's not a bunch of variety as to what you can get from the response of what you're trying to do. So in the marketing world, I find that interesting. So you really do have to establish what the objectives are up front. And my question is, how firm can those objectives be, right? Because I've often talked to Fab and I say, I'd like to do this and do that, and I get the typical Fab answer. It depends on 7,000 things. And he's right. And I know that. So how do you, like, let's say you're talking to someone who really wants some specific numbers on something, like how comfortable are you in doing that? Let's talk about those objectives. Like, do you Will you say, like, if someone says to you, we want to do this marketing campaign and we're hoping to increase our numbers by 10%, like, is that, like, I'll let you talk.
Yeah. So the way I like to build marketing plans is twofold. There's two ways that we bring metrics into play. One is that every marketing initiative must ladder up to a growth goal. So as an organization, you should establish growth goals, whether it's for the quarter or the next 6 months or for the year. We want to get 20 more onboarded clients. We want revenue of this much. We want to launch this new product. Let's say those are the three, whatever. Every initiative you do should ladder up to or drive forward one of those goals or both of them. So at that point, okay, we know at least what the long-term goal we're trying to achieve here. We want to get 20 new clients this month with A, B, and C initiatives, because A, B, and C initiatives we recognize we're doing to drive 20 more clients into our door, or 30 more leads, because we know our conversion rate is really high once they get into our sales funnel, whatever it might be. So you've already got a metric right there. Then you come up with your initiatives. So let's say there's 2 initiatives. We're going to do an e-marketing campaign, and we're going to do some social media posts or LinkedIn posts, let's say, or whatever it might be. And then you define specific KPIs from those specific initiatives. I'm shutting my window because someone's mowing the lawn. Give me a sec. That's always helpful. And then you have KPIs specifically to that initiative, right? So if it's LinkedIn, we want to engage X number of people with comments. This is kind of not a specific example. It's not a great one, because really to get comments on yours, you have to comment on other people's to get yourself bumped in the algorithm. But anyways, you're making an objective. And then at least you can know, okay, did we achieve this or not, and why? It gets more complicated to your reference of FABs, like 50,000 reasons as to whether it's a success or not, when you talk about larger advertising. So let's say digital ads. Digital ads can have lots of objectives. It could be sales, let's say e-commerce sales, but there are lots of steps within that you have to hit in order for you to finally get a sale. So is it maybe just we want click-through right now, and we know our website converts well, so the whole objective of this ad is to get click-through, is to get clicks, because we know once people get to our website, we can sell it. Mm-hmm. So you have to have a good understanding of all of the marketing tactics that are in place in order to realize what the objective of that particular piece of creative or that particular initiative is.
Okay, very interesting.
And so that makes sense. And I found like a lot of the discussion, obviously it makes sense, right? If your website's converting well, then my goal is click-through rates, because I know that once, or like the example you gave before, my goal is leads, because I know once the sales team gets a hold of it, they're good at converting them. But that in some way requires some sort of understanding of how that chain works, right? Like I get a lead, or I get a visit, I can convert it. I get a lead, sales can sell it. And I find in my experience, and I do work with like sometimes a lot younger companies, like maybe younger marketing teams or no marketing teams. And there seems to sometimes be a disconnect between, well, obviously I want leads because I need to close more deals, right? I'm an early stage startup. Investors are going to judge me on number of deals that I can close, not necessarily the revenue yet. But there's like that gap then in between, which is like, how do I know how many leads to get? Like, how do I even get leads? I mean, it's not even the number forget the number at that point. It's like, how do I even get leads? And then they'll try LinkedIn for a month or two, and like, this is not working. And then they'll just try different things left, right, and center. How would you deal with that? Like when in an environment, I guess, where there's less historical data, less history, or less data to go off of?
Yeah. And that's where you have to do a bit of trial and error as a company, as a marketing expert or a marketing professional within the organization, or as a founder, whatever your job is. You need to recognize that you're doing stuff as an experiment to start. But if you don't track how the first efforts and attempts at the experiment went, you don't have any learning. So I focus in the B2B space, which is a lot easier to play in. B2C is more complicated, right? Because you're trying to sell, let's say, e-commerce, you're trying to sell programs, platforms, courses, whatever you're trying to sell to the masses. There are a lot of levels and layers where things can fall short that made your paid advertising unsuccessful. And so I get a lot of people who say to me like, oh, I put so much money into ads and like, nothing worked. It didn't work. I'm like, okay, but do you know why it didn't work? Because there's about 1,000 reasons that could have made that not work on many levels in that customer journey. Everything from engagement of the immediate piece of creative, to click through, to funnel of your effectiveness of your website as a sales funnel, to a click on booking a sales call, to the ability of that salesperson to convert. So to your point, yeah, you need to have a good sense of how the machine and the organism on whole operates to know where your role is as a marketer and what your particular initiative is meant to do. And it can't necessarily do everything. So it's important to say, we're going to do ads, and the goal of this ad is to get leads and get leads and get leads. And if we know we get lots of leads, but then people aren't buying, then you know you have a problem with your website. But you don't know that until you've tried it and know that people are hitting your website and not buying. So it's a bit of a trial and error. It's to start, but it's really important that you're really aware and you do those initiatives with your eyes wide open, looking for holes, looking for problems, looking for where it fell short, versus being just like, oh, it was a waste of money. Now I have to do something else. Let's go to trade shows, right? Like, no, it doesn't make any sense.
I like what you're saying there, because it's especially like you said, when we're starting out and we have no data and we have no history and we have no experience, not experience in terms of the marketer's experience, but experience as a company in doing marketing, that it's almost like I can draw a really loose parallel between what Paul says with like a sales process, right? Which is your sales process disqualify leads along the way or contacts people along the way. It's like your first marketing initiatives is about disqualifying what's working, like realizing what's working, what's not working. And if, like you said, we're generating a lot of leads, but then nobody's converting, well, clearly there's a message on the site, or we're not targeting the right people. Like, and then we have two variables we can go. I really like how you position that.
And it's really pushing whoever you're working with on whatever initiative to be aware of your goals, to be aware of what you're measuring, and to kind of hold them accountable, not for the success necessarily of it, but to give you enough information in return to help you make an educated decision on whether it actually worked or not. Mm-hmm. And that's where creative partners are really important, or marketing agencies you may be hiring out. It's important that you hold them accountable to giving you the metrics. Let's say they're delivering a report on what's important to you. So you have to be aware of like what metrics you actually care about, not the metrics they want to show you. And you use them as a resource to collect metrics for you. And then you either, if you can't analyze them, find someone who can, or look at them yourself and say, okay, like what actually happened here for real.
And so,
go ahead.
You want to? Okay. So then I have a weird question for you. And that's, can everyone and can every organization, I guess, and again, we're talking about B2B and maybe smaller, right? But can everybody do marketing? Because to me, what I'm hearing is also like, you have to have some sort of a trust that you're heading somewhere. And I feel like a lot of people become very impatient and they're like, yeah, I want to generate leads, but then they're going to hire like their 16-year-old nephew to run some like LinkedIn ads for the first time in their life. And then they're going to be like, well, the $60 budget went nowhere. This is useless. I feel like there's like sometimes also a disconnect between the expectation and what we're willing to put in. And so that sometimes I wonder, like, I don't know if every company can do marketing, like they have the tools to do it, but there seems to be a certain requirement of we know what we want from our marketing, even though we don't know how to get it yet, but we know what we want from it.
Yeah. Every company should and can do marketing. I think about me. I'm a lone person here in my attic. I have 5 clients at any given time, maybe 6. I do marketing. I recently did some live talks to a cohort of founders of medium-sized, my ideal prospect organizations. That was a marketing initiative for me. I went in and did a free talk, and I mentored them in a live cohort like morning where we just did one-on-one stuff. You can call it to business development, you can call it marketing, but it's all kind of the same thing when you're a small business, especially. I spent some money to join a Spring to LinkedIn program where I actually joined a cohort myself, and we all helped to bump each other's messaging up in the algorithm in the system of LinkedIn. So my prospects are more likely to see me. That was a huge marketing initiative on my part. I posted stuff every day. It was like taxing. And that was my marketing initiative. And so after doing it, I was like, how many leads I get? How many new people connected with me? How many people who were creeping me in the dark for years came out of the woodwork and said, hey, Alyssa, let's chat. So that is marketing, right? It's getting yourself visible, getting yourself aware, and connecting with your ideal prospect or target. That's all marketing is. And everyone can and should do it. And it doesn't have to cost a lot.
No, and that's it. I think it does require like accepting that that's it. You need to have a purpose, right? I think a lot of people that I've seen, and without stereotyping, but I'll say like maybe more established companies. They're still small, but more established. They're like, I just need more leads, and all of a sudden it's like, you know, and then next thing you know, like they're going back and doing a trade show, and it's like there's just not that patience there. And I understand it, right? Like you don't necessarily gonna have the time. Go.
And the other thing too is if you're ever struggling to think about what you should do for marketing, like what do? I don't know. I don't have a lot of money. What can I do? What marketing will work? I always, and I chirp this all the time to you guys, you've got to go back to your target. For example, I was doing my mentoring with these businesses for this program, and I literally had 3 of them say to me, oh, I don't really need marketing, or my only marketing, word of mouth. That's how I get most of my clients and my customers is word of mouth. People, they see my product because their friend has it and they spread the word, and that's it. And so I was like, okay, cool. I get that. But those people who were the referees, not the referrers, don't matter to you. What you need is, how did you connect with that original person who spread it via word of mouth? So how did that happen? And the answer usually is, oh, it's this particular type of person who like loves my stuff. They're like my, loyal brand people, and they always buy my stuff. I was like, okay, well, they didn't magically know about your product. So how did they find out about your product? What did you do that was successful in connecting with them? Let's think about them and other ways you can connect with them. And so that makes it way simpler. It's like, oh, it's Joan. She's 45 and has a dog and 3 kids and a cottage and a boat. I'm like, great. Let's find Joan, right? Where is she? Let's talk to her some more so she can spread word of mouth about your product all of her neighbors again. Let's find 20 more Joans.
I think
it makes it easy. Sorry.
Yeah, for sure. And I think what I'm realizing now is it's not, and I think you've answered the question, what metrics should you be looking for? So of course you need to pre-establish that before you start anything, but it's not can and should everyone do it. It's what should they do? And I think that's a big part of the discussion too. Often when people start doing marketing, it's such a wide thing. Like, you're talking about LinkedIn, you're talking about paid advertising. I mean, there's such a wide array of things you can do. And then the goals can be so different. It could be lead generation. It could even be sales. So it's more to define what the objectives are and then to decide what approach can I take. And I don't know, I'll ask both of you who come from marketing, do you think, and do you think there's only one way for a small company to do it best, or can they do many different things and start in many different ways? Or is there like a step for an SMB to say that this is the first step and it should always be the first step?
Yeah. You want to go, Fab?
You can go for it.
Okay. I would say my answer is, what is your lowest hanging fruit? It's what's the easiest, most accessible, most immediate way you can connect with your ideal target. And you do that first. It's different for every business. As another example, I connected with a business who is opening a new Pennzoil shop. So he just bought the franchise. It was dilapidated, falling apart. He needs to rebrand it, recreate it from scratch. He has an office. He has people physically moving through his shop. His lowest hanging fruit is to market and communicate in that physical space as much as he possibly can to any person who walks in his door, right? So he has a car wash option as well. He has, let's say, detailing in addition to your oil change. You make sure that you're maximizing the experience and your interaction with that target where they are when they are. So that's a very different objective than someone who has a online course, right? Yeah. So you can't, it's the lowest hanging fruit. It's where you can most easily, most quickly, and make most impact with your target most immediately is where you should start.
Good.
And I'll add another variable. Yeah, I do. And I'll add another variable, which is like, especially when you're small, like when you're larger, it's a bit different. But you should, or I find what I see works best is your logo is hanging fruit, but also then also respect your, how should we call it, like your DNA, right? Some people are very like they're horrible writers, right? So then well, don't start writing a blog, right? Because you'll write a blog post every 3 months, you know what I mean? Like, and it'll probably be really bad. And but some people are really great in video, so I'm like, let's do video and let's see how we can then use video to engage with your people in the store. Or I think that's a variable that often gets neglected. People look at all these tactics that they're seeing online and whatnot, and they're just trying to do what they feel arbitrarily is the best thing to do. But then they're not listening to what they're capable of actually doing. And some people are super introverted, and maybe the best thing to do is just walk around your store and talk to people, and that's the best way to do it. It's not scalable, but it's the best way to do it.
Yeah, totally, 100%. Especially with a small business where it's just you or you and like one other person. You need to do what feels good, what feels comfortable, what feels right, and that will inevitably serve you better than doing what you want.
Because I've seen so many times where, again, like these are smaller businesses where it's just like the marketing just feels awkward because they're just trying to do a tactic that doesn't fit with them because they've attended some mastermind course that told them they had to do social media. So they're trying to do social media, and then you're looking at their Facebook feed or their Instagram feed, and it's all like posts about like, hey, check out my new discount, check out my discount. And it's just not working. You're clearly seeing that nothing's happening because they're not listening to who they are as a person.
And that's where, circling back to analytics too, if you chose, I'm going to try this, I'm going to do these Facebook posts and I'm going to try to get, 4 comments and 2 people booking over the course of the month. If that doesn't happen, then you need to stop doing that or genuinely analyze why it's not working. And a lot of times people just don't stop doing it, surprisingly, and are like, I'm just doing it because I think I should and I hate it. And I often come to clients by saying, okay, well, how much business did it actually achieve for you in the last 6 months? Oh, none. Okay, well, maybe you stop doing that.
Yeah. And I think let's talk about a scaling business, right? Where like you're kind of past the DNA stage because you have staff now, you can hire people. Like fine, you have your low hanging fruit, but how do you identify that low hanging fruit, right? Like I think that's a challenge that people have, and I know we're kind of getting far away from the how do you evaluate your marketing success, but let's talk about how do you identify your low hanging fruit, and then we'll go back to success.
Yeah, that goes with how to really make a quick and dirty marketing plan. So my recommendation of this is to think about your target, know your target very well, and have done some research, talk to them, done all your work. And then you brainstorm and stream of consciousness, write down as many ways you think you can connect with that person as possible. Everything you can possibly think of, even if it's a terrible idea, I want you to have 100 of them. And then you basically make a grid, and you've got high impact, easy, high impact, difficult, low impact, easy, low impact, difficult. And then you pop those ideas in the chart accordingly. And as a result, you get pumped out a pretty clear prioritization list of what's easiest to do and most effective. And so you do those things first. And then what's most effective but a little harder to do, you do those things next. What's easy to do, least effective, and then table anything else.
That's interesting. So what you're saying is, I love the grid idea, because for someone who's got an SMB who's not sure what to do, what you're saying is, map it all out. Full disclosure, Alyssa and I have been doing this in the background, and it really makes sense because you're saying, the answer, who that target is. How do you think the best way to reach them is, and go for the, basically, like Fab was saying earlier, the low hanging fruit. Go for what is easy and high impactful, right? As much as possible. That's interesting. And you guys are, again, both experts in marketing. We often tend to roll these conversations back to SMBs because, let's face it, the small business is the one who's questioning whether marketing is useful. He's the one, if can, should. The big businesses that are out there, there's no doubt in their mind that they should be doing marketing. The question becomes, what should we do to maximize our results, right? So again, and would you say, Alyssa, that it's a little bit the same strategy to say, well, okay, we've done this much marketing in the past, and now we have to reevaluate what is high impact and easy to do? Or is it the same? Is it sort of a more complex grid or a more advanced grid of the same thing as you move along?
When you're a bigger organization?
Yep.
Yeah. Not really.
Okay,
No.
good. Good.
Yeah, not really. I think when you're with a big organization, there is more things to account for. So, for example, you need to understand how well your sales team can convert. You need to get a better sense of what the larger growth company. But as long as you know the growth objectives of the company with those in mind, and you know, again, your target, and you have the lexicon too, if you've worked doing this job for a while, you know what works and what doesn't. So maybe there's a few things you established as high impact easy that you discovered really weren't as high impact as you thought they were. So you have learning from the past that you're always cycling through and taking into account when you're coming up with new ideas. But redoing the exercise is always helpful every 6 months, certainly once a year, because landscape changes, because maybe your target probably hasn't changed, but likely your business has, and maybe you have a new product. Maybe you want to go into a different region. So it's always a valuable exercise to be redoing. And it's such a simple tool. It could be used for any scale.
Okay, so if we were to wrap up this conversation, and correct me if I'm wrong, from the guy who's learned the most from this conversation. So we should definitely do, and everyone can do marketing. You need to reevaluate. And the most important thing is to define the objectives of what you're hoping to acquire from that marketing campaign or that marketing approach. And when you are a larger company, to tie it into the specific objectives of, let's say, lead generation or whatnot, it becomes a little bit more complex. But really, everyone should do marketing. Everyone can do marketing. And you just need to figure out what your objectives are. When you're starting out, you need to do some brainstorming to figure out how it's going to work. But once you're there, there's no question that anybody and everyone should be doing marketing, regardless of the size of your business. Is that a fair
Yeah.
Is that a fair comment from what I've learned?
Yeah.
And to that is, like, especially when we're talking about, startups, especially because they do launch a lot of new things. Like, I think it's still surprising me how many people still to this day underestimate the value of building a plan. Like, how many startups I've seen who launch a product and they have like this sales team, and it's just like, but then there's no leads coming in, and then they're like, oh, now we need to have this and we need to do that, and it's all about these outbound efforts. And it's like, it surprises me how many people don't have that marketing plan and how important it is. And I mean, if you're in B2B and you therefore have a sales team, like working together to be able to achieve those objectives. And even if you don't have the numbers, right? Like you're new, you don't know what your conversion rates are because, you've only had a handful of clients so far. It's okay to put assumptions in, right? Like, let's assume that we're converting 30%. Fine. Like, okay, if we need 40 clients, then I should have picked easier numbers to do math with, but then you can just move up the chain, right? And I think, but you need to have that plan. Like, I think before you launch anything, you need to have a very clear idea as to what you're going to do to achieve your objective. Like, it makes no sense today to launch something with no idea on how you're going to market it or sell it, really.
But you're right, Fab. A lot of people do that, right? Say, we got a good idea, let's go do it. So I just had this really weird thought, again, a sales guy thought. So everyone's doing marketing of some sort, right? So there's no one who's doing no marketing. So even Fab, in that reality that you just mentioned, when they have all these salespeople and there's no leads coming in, so the marketing that they're normally doing, and correct me, I would call this marketing, is cold calling. Because if you're cold calling, that's a marketing effort. The reps are doing marketing. Am I right?
Yeah.
So, and that goes back to our conversation last time about like these, what we call them, sales development reps that are increasingly in the marketing team because they are part of a marketing effort.
Yeah. And also, I would add to that too, is that marketing is not digital ads. Marketing is not, dear God. Like, if I hear an SME come to me again being like, oh, marketing, I spent so much money on digital ads. I'm just like, don't talk to me about digital ads. Like, never talk to me about digital ads. Marketing is so much more than that. Marketing starts at a fundamental understanding of what your business is about, what you have to offer, and how you communicate that out into the world. It's called positioning. And
Yep.
it's how people remember and recognize your business as anything from anything else.
A
And
business
then
card is marketing, right?
exactly. And that's really valuable from a sales perspective. It's
Yep.
valuable from a business development perspective.
Yep.
It's how you communicate out there in the world. It's how you represent yourself, how people remember you. It's important from a networking perspective. Like marketing is essential to good networking.
Yep.
What's your, quote unquote, what's your elevator speech? Fine, you can call it that for a lack of a much better term. But what are you all about? What do you do for me? What's your value? What's your point? How do you figure that out, right? And that's where I think a lot of small business owners don't have that, and then they go into execution mode and hire people to do tactical work with just thin air to work with, or making things up themselves. And so
Yeah,
a lot of
I think
marketing
the
falls
problem
short.
with yeah, and I think the problem with marketing is the same problem as you have with sales. A lot of people think, well, okay, you're just a natural born salesperson, right? So they go into sales and they do these things. And yes, if you can talk, you have some form of you're on a scale of 0 to 100, a salesperson, right? And again, if you can start a business, you're doing some form of marketing. I mean, the color of your door is marketing, right? So everyone has that basic capacity to do a little bit of marketing, bit of sales. But as I say to a lot of salespeople, you need to structure and organize what it is that you're trying to do to really best get the best results out of sales. And I think from what you two are saying to me, it's the same thing. Take time, think about it, look at what's out there. There's a million different ways of marketing. If you structure it and you're organized in your approach of doing it, and you talk to experts who've seen similar companies do similar marketing efforts to yours, then you can maybe base yourself on past results of other people to help you guide what it is that you should be doing. But essentially, the objectives come from you, but the expertise of marketing should be done in a structured and organized fashion to give you as close as possible the results that you are looking for.
Yeah, exactly. And you need to have that deep understanding of what you want to achieve in order to even analyze or assess whether what you did from a marketing perspective was successful or not, and uncover why it didn't work too. So, yeah, because a lot of times you get those numbers that fail. And I think sales are a great metric in general. I think sales should always be what is the ultimate success. And that's what everything ladders up to in terms of growth targets. And that's why growth targets are so important. But there's nuances within each initiative that can be more granular. And in developing those, you have to have a clear understanding of what the objective of that tactic really was specifically.
Yeah.
And
But
that takes another level of understanding a little bit.
I'm going to challenge you though on something, because I think like with sales, marketing is the same thing. So there's the activity you do and the methodology, right? So the activity is whatever you're doing in marketing, and the methodology is what the content is. But you don't control the reaction. So yes, you want to look at results, but let's face it, like one type of marketing with one client will have these great results, and the same type of marketing with another client, because the economy's changed, because the market's different, might have different results. So yes, in the end, you want results, but you have to understand that you're only controlling 2/3 of all the parameters, which is your activity, your methodology, and that the results will always be controlled ultimately, or affected ultimately, by what's happening out there. It's not, I say this in sales too, it's not, the results are not just based on you and your methodology. There is a third factor that you don't control. So if you expect the same results from a marketing campaign that someone else did, you might be totally off, because you're in a totally different economy, a totally different environment. You have a different type of product, right? If you're Kleenex in 1932 putting out the first tissue, you might have had a very simple marketing campaign that worked great for you, and then the same guy came 3 years later and tried to do the same thing, as, call himself Clonex, and it didn't work, because it wasn't the same market. But what changed was that people already knew the economy was different. They already had paper towels, or so you don't control that part. You only control your activities and your methodology. And I think it's the same thing in sales. Anyways, that's from what I'm hearing, maybe you guys will say, Paul, you're totally off the rocker, and you can tell me if you think so. But does that make sense? Is it the same thing?
Yeah, I mean, to me, it goes back to what Alyssa was saying at some point earlier, which is like understanding your audience, right? If you're Kleenex and Clonex, like you invariably need different audiences, right? And then it goes back to positioning. Like, yeah, Kleenex could be, the tissue for innovators, and Clonex is like the cheap brand. Like there's like, for sure, that's why like different marketing, same marketing strategies for, you could get inspired, sure, but your audience is, if you're going up head to head against the same audience, especially if you're going up against like the juggernaut in your space, like that's just not going to work, right?
Yeah.
Like it's just not.
It's true. And again, that's positioning. That's knowing your target and positioning your product effectively in the market, and knowing what else is out there and how you can position yourself to be different and better than anyone else. And even not even different and better subjectively, but different and better in the eyes of your ideal target, right? And big brands do this all the time, because you're a cracker. Like, this cracker's about fun. This cracker's about wholesome family enjoyment. Like, it's ridiculous. Like the nuances that people are putting into crackers at a large brand like CPG level used to make me like literally laugh out loud.
Yeah.
But it's a lot easier for those who maybe have one other competitor in the market or two other competitors, because they offer something fairly niche, or they're just not like a mass product on shelf with 4 other products just like it. Then you're like, why are you not capitalizing on this opportunity to really take advantage of your position? Like, you don't have to make up weird stuff. Like, we're about kid fun and we're about umbrellas. Like, you don't have to make up weird stuff. You can literally say, this is what we're about. This is who we're for. This is what we do. And you can be really simple about it. And a lot of times I think businesses don't do positioning effectively when it really is like sometimes a really easy thing for them to be doing. And
they probably know it unconsciously, right? But then they see like some posts on LinkedIn saying you need to post like 3 times a day, and they get so focused on that they forget about all the important stuff that in reality nobody does. Nobody spends time thinking about like what's their positioning, and they feel that's a CPG thing. And like, maybe when I'm as big as Coca-Cola, then I'll hire like this big firm to help me with my positioning. But the reality is like, they know what makes them different, right? Like, I mean, Paul and I, we've spoken to a lot of entrepreneurs on this show, and even though they don't have like a positioning, they all know what makes them different, right? They all know. It's just that then when they get to marketing or even selling, they just forget it all, and they focus on like what they saw on LinkedIn and how like what this like marketing guru said, and they focus on that, and they forget completely who they are.
Yeah,
I don't know where I was going with that, but
it's content, and content must be driven by your positioning. Because what the hell else are you going to say? Like,
hey, I have a subject for our next podcast. I don't want to start it now because I've got a hard stop in 10 minutes. But what about the difference between marketing and advertising? I'd like to talk to that, or the nuances, because you said something that really drove me. You said, like Coca-Cola or whoever, Pepsi, these large brands that, it gets like, there's a whole intensity in what they're trying to achieve that is really beyond marketing. They're not just about telling their target market.
We're a cracker. We're a soda that tastes good.
Yeah. They're going way further than that. Like, they're like delving into the psychological intricacy. So I'd like to maybe talk about that next time. I don't know. What do you think, Fab?
Yeah, that could be cool.
All right.
Well, it's an interesting place to play, especially for those of us, or for those audience members who are product companies and B2C. It would be interesting for them to hear that, because B2B is a little different. You never have to be like the Coca-Cola equivalent from a branding perspective. It's a little bit different. But for new brands, especially in like a consumer space, it's really important for them. They want to be the Coca-Cola with their messaging to start. But if you're not known, if you don't have the brand attribution and the recognition in the world of a Coca-Cola or an Oreo cookie, you can't go play there yet, right? So it's a lot of new brands try to go wacky like the big brands do, and big brands only do that because Oreo's boring. Everyone knows what an Oreo is, so give me something different, so I pick it up instead of something beside me. But if you're a new product, you need to still talk about what's your flavor, do you taste good, what the heck's in the can, right? And that's what needs to be messaging, not all this other stuff. You need to give the bare bones, the basics, to make me pick that up on shelf, because I've never seen that before. I sure as hell know what an Oreo is, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So
Very interesting.
and that's where advertising, I think, and marketing kind of can be an interesting conversation.
Okay, cool. Wonderful.
Awesome. Thank you all. This was fun, even though I started off weird when we were offline. That's not good. Inside story. Thank you, everybody. That was really fun. We'll see you
Fab was
in a
ignoring.
month.
I'll make the inside story, an outside story. Fab was ignoring Alyssa and I. We were ready to go, and he's just reading his text.
Yeah,
ignoring
we were
us.
chirping him on chat, trying to get his attention.
It finally worked.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much. Bye.
Fab, it was a pleasure throwing you under the bus.
Yeah.
Likewise.